Hi, thanks for having me. Today, I want to talk to you about the huge shifts that are happening in the entertainment industry, because we're finally reaching the logical conclusion of changes that started 20 years ago with the iPod. Yes, we're going all the way back to 2001. The iPod and the iTunes Music Store took emergent behavior from an innovative community and turned it into a mainstream consumer behavior. By giving consumers a legal and easy-to-use way to listen to digital music, Apple started the ball rolling for the entire digital media industry. Everything that followed, from Netflix and TikTok to the iPhone and NFTs, they're all iterations on how and what and where we sell and monetize and consume digital entertainment. But now we've reached a saturation point, where entertainment is digital by default, where gaming dwarfs film and television in both revenue and time spent, where all media is consumed on powerful computing devices. So the rules are starting to change, and with them, so are the strategies we need to deploy in order to win the hearts and minds of our audience. We're moving from a world where only a few hit franchises are able to reach a global audience to one where even seemingly niche local content has the same potential. From a world where windowing was designed to maximize revenue at each stage of release, to one where the best intellectual property spans every channel at once to maximize attention. From a world where we passively consume our entertainment, to one where we're immersed in the worlds that we love. And lastly, from a world where creators bestow their art onto an eager fan base, to one in which we're all actively involved in its creation. Let's take a look at these trends one by one. First, let's start with the shift from entertainment media being inherently local to global by default. I'm speaking to you from New York, and our hosts and many of you are in Hong Kong, and we have attendees from every corner of the globe. This, of course, is the natural state of the internet, to bridge those geographic divides. But for years, that was really only true of social media, while professionally produced content was locked up in local and regional distribution deals. This all changed first with Spotify in 2011 and then Netflix in 2016, which began a domino effect that would force every other entertainment platform to compete at a global level. The logic was simple. By reaching the largest audience, Netflix could justify investing the most money on developing its original content. They realized early on that great storytelling knows no borders and could resonate with fans from dramatically different cultures. While Stranger Things was the first Netflix hit to build a global fan base, the real proof that this strategy was working came just a few months ago with Squid Game. Squid Game was the first non-American Netflix production that topped the charts in every region of the world. Thanks to K-pop and the success of Parasite, Korean pop culture's influence had already been on the rise globally. But Netflix didn't need to know that to find a hit. They just needed a global platform and ways to promote popular content to the right fans. So how did they do it? Well, first, they own the most valuable piece of real estate on the planet for film and television, the Netflix homepage. Every day, almost 100 million people open Netflix looking for something to watch, and many of them choose something on that first page. By being the early leader in the space, Netflix generated a ton of data about its users before it had any serious competition. As long as users keep watching, they will always be one step ahead of everyone else, and they can use that data to drive very good algorithmic recommendations. Those algorithms drove the first wave of viewers for Squid Game. But the second wave was driven by the top 10 lists. If you're not interested in what Netflix recommends, and after all, people can be a bit moody and difficult to predict at times, you can always see what's popular in your area. And just a couple of weeks ago, Netflix made it possible to see what's popular in every area. Make no mistake, these lists are partially a conceit to the analysts like myself who are demanding more transparency about viewership on the platform. But they're also a powerful way to reinforce hits. While early viewers of Squid Game might have had a preference for dystopian science fiction or Korean language dramas, at some point viewers started watching it just because it was what everyone else was watching. They wanted to be able to participate in the global conversation. It's a bit of a paradox, but Squid Game became a hit because it was already a hit, and Netflix had a way to communicate that if you weren't watching it, you were missing out. So what can we learn from Netflix about the future of digital entertainment? Well, one, you have to build that infrastructure well before you have a guaranteed success. Your hits are always going to be constrained by your addressable market, and in the 2020s, there's no reason for your addressable market not to be the whole world. Two, you or your users are going to be producing a ton of content in order to find those hits. At this stage, it's best to rely on algorithms and machine learning to help sort through the pile of content and get the right things in front of the right users at the right time. And lastly, when you do see something shooting up the charts, be ready to use your editorial channels to help support it and introduce it to new regions. So that's where things are distributed. Now let's talk about how they're distributed. And we'll start with an example of what not to do. Around the same time as Squid Game was making its debut globally on Netflix, Disney's cable network FX was debuting the latest season of American Crime Story here in the US. The first two seasons were enormous hits, but this one barely registered on the cultural radar. No one was watching and no one was talking about it. So what happened? In the time since 2018, when the last season was released, viewing behavior changed. Consumers in the US, and particularly young consumers, moved from cable to streaming. And while Disney added a lot of FX shows to the Hulu streaming service, American Crime Story was stuck in an outdated contract, meaning that it won't stream until the middle of 2022. And when it does, it will stream exclusively on Netflix. Not a great outcome for Disney. This was a unique misstep for them. They spent billions of dollars to buy back the global distribution rights to many of the Marvel movies in order to ensure they were all on Disney Plus in its first year. And during the pandemic, owning their own platform allowed them to take the step of launching their own premium VOD window, Premier Access, which gave you day and date access at home to movies when they were, or would be, released in theaters for a premium price. Disney experimented with a variety of release strategies over the course of the pandemic, and recently have been moving away from Premier Access and back towards traditional theatrical releases. Back in 2019, Disney controlled 40% of the global box office, so it's been difficult to resist the lure of big, splashy theatrical releases. They've been core to the Disney strategy since the beginning, as you can see in this diagram from 1957, drawn by Walt Disney himself. Theatrical is the engine that powers the Disney flywheel. But we're only heading to a world with more channels to consume entertainment content, not fewer. That's why Disney launched Disney Plus in the first place, and it has been building out slates of TV shows for their most popular franchises. They know that in order to maintain that popularity, consumers need to spend time with these characters, every week, not once or twice a year with a big theatrical release. They're finally updating that flywheel to contain the modern digital media channels that are capturing consumer attention in the 2020s. This shift in strategy to owned digital channels will definitely serve them well in the future, as new screens start to pop up in unexpected places. Take cars, for example. As car makers prepare for an autonomous future when we can take our eyes off the road, they're starting to build more entertainment features directly into vehicles, making deals with streaming platforms to capture that next pocket of consumer attention that's going to become available. And this strategy extends to the most important media channel for the next decade, gaming. For years, gaming has generated more revenue and captured more time and attention than film or television, especially on a global basis. But entertainment companies have been slow to embrace gaming. Former Disney CEO Bob Iger admitted that he just didn't understand it, and only recently have they landed on a viable solution of licensing Disney IP to companies like Epic Games and Square Enix to make sure they're reaching gamers. So what can we learn from Disney about the future of digital entertainment? 1, you need to meet your audience where they're watching, listening, and playing. Do you want to be Squid Game, or do you want to be American Crime Story? You can't let the channel dictate the availability of your content, or you'll get lost in the cultural conversation and might never recover. Right now, it may be okay for your content to not be available in cars or for your characters to not be in games, but it won't be for long. 2, you should extend your IP to every logical channel. If you have fans, you have super fans, and they'll want to spend as much time with your characters and stories as possible. We're in a war for attention. Don't let somebody else get a foothold because they've run out of your content. And lastly, the best way to make sure you can do both of those other two is to own your own distribution. You don't want to be tied up in old, outdated contracts that prevent you from moving quickly to embrace new platforms and new ways of connecting with your audience. I want to stay on Disney and gaming for a moment. You'll notice that I mentioned that you need to own your own distribution, but in gaming, Disney isn't doing that. They're handing their characters and their IP off to third-party game developers. So how does that make sense? Spoiler, it doesn't, and it's another thing that they're doing wrong. Disney has tried their hand at running their own game studios several times over the past few decades. They were mostly a bust because, as Bob Iger noted, the top executives at Disney don't really understand the gaming industry. But while Disney was spinning their wheels, gaming as a whole was growing to be much more important. There are multiple generations now who have grown up playing video games, and study after study shows that once a gamer, always a gamer. We're long past the idea of gamers being 13-year-old boys playing in their parents' basements. Over 80% of the global population plays some kind of video games regularly. I like to say that gaming gets older and more female every year, but that's really just because that's where the growth opportunities are. And that's why I think it's safe to say that the future of entertainment is going to be more immersive and interactive. It doesn't matter if we actually ever get to Mark Zuckerberg's idea of a metaverse. Gaming technologies are colliding with how we produce film and television and music and, well, everything else. And that's going to make for a more immersive internet, whether we call it the metaverse or not. Take, for example, the digital production that was pioneered by Disney with The Mandalorian, a virtual soundstage complete with computer-controlled lighting for the actors to mimic the virtual lights coming from that CGI background. It was created using Unreal Engine from Epic Games. They're also working on digital twins of places like Shanghai and cars like the new electric Hummer, and even hyper-realistic human avatars called metahumans. It's not hard to see how, in the not-too-distant future, creators will be able to use the exact same sets from The Mandalorian in the next Star Wars video game, and maybe import the digital twin of your dream car into a racing game. Disney also happens to be using Unreal Engine for their most innovative theme park experiences. It powers the digital graphics on the rides in Star Wars Galaxy's Edge, where you can strap in and fly the Millennium Falcon. It really starts to blur the lines between theme park ride and video game. For now, they're still operating all of those in silos, but Disney and Unreal are already shipping a lot of the pieces of a potential metaverse right under our noses. But looks can be deceiving, and I've thought that Disney had cracked it once before. In 2013, they introduced a game platform called Disney Infinity. At the time, it was a response to the popular Skylanders model of gaming, where the purchase of physical toys unlocked new content within the game. It made a lot of sense for Disney, who had a robust toy business and a floundering game studio. Maybe the toys could help sell the game. But they accidentally stumbled into creating their own Disney metaverse, a place where characters from all of their properties, from Star Wars to princesses to Marvel, could mix and mingle in a way that made sense. Cinderella could go on adventures with Jack Sparrow and Wally, and it didn't seem out of place. In many ways, it recreated the way that kids play with toys in the real world, mixing and matching whoever their favorites are at the time without worrying about the rules of the IP lawyers. Sadly, Disney Infinity wasn't long for this world, and in 2016 it was shuttered. If only they had just hung on a few more years, the Disney metaverse might have found a home alongside Disney+. We might be having a very different discussion, one where gaming is poised to replace theatrical films as the center of Disney's flywheel. That opportunity is what just drove one of the biggest acquisitions in the space. Just a few weeks ago, Unreal's primary competitor, Unity, acquired Weta Digital, the effects company behind Lord of the Rings and Game of Thrones. The fact that it was Unity, a game engine, buying Weta, and not the other way around, shows you just how much the future of entertainment is going to be rooted in gaming technologies. So how can Disney, famous for doing everything themselves, continue to outsource their gaming tech? Without a doubt, Disney was the master of the 20th century version of immersive experiences. They invented the idea of the theme park in the first place and continue to push the boundaries with things like their new Star Wars hotel. The Galactic Star Cruiser is an all-encompassing luxury immersive experience. It's imagining the kind of experience we can only dream about with virtual reality today, but with no headset required. Even without a headset, though, it still uses plenty of computer graphics throughout the experience. And yes, they are powered by Unreal Engine. I won't count Disney out yet. They're still uniquely qualified to design real-world immersive experiences, and that will continue to count for a lot. But as tech companies push the limits of VR and AR over the next decade, virtual concerts in Roblox and Fortnite will be just the beginning. Soon, you may not need Disney's kind of expertise to be immersed in your favorite fictional worlds. So what can we learn from Disney's winding path with gaming and immersive entertainment? First, Remember, gaming is for everyone. If you're a gamer, you already know this, but if you're not, it's time to start learning. It's a very mainstream pastime and is constantly gaining share of attention globally. If you don't have a gaming strategy for 2022, you are already behind. Second, gaming technologies are rapidly expanding into other fields. If you're shooting any kind of video content, you can start using digital production today. If you're working with any brand that makes physical products, get those 3D assets lined up. And if you're a celebrity or influencer, it's time to start exploring what a digital doppelganger can do for you. And third, keep an eye on what's happening with virtual and augmented reality. VR will soon make it possible for lots of folks to create Disney-quality immersive entertainment that anyone can experience at home. And AR will help us bridge those digital worlds and the real world, unlocking new kinds of games and entertainment that we can play all day, every day. Okay, one more shift that I want to talk to you about today. And that's the shift from creators developing their content in isolation to communities of co-creation, where the artist might be the figurehead, but everything they do not only involves their fans, but requires them to participate. It's a lot, I know, but think about it. There's a long history of fans creating content to supplement or extend their favorite pieces of entertainment. From Trent Reznor open sourcing some of his songs as remixable GarageBand files, to 50 Shades of Grey, which started out as online fan fiction for the Twilight series, to my recent favorite, The Infinity Saga, a fan edit of all the Marvel movies up through Avengers Endgame. The creator meticulously re-edited the films so that scenes appear in chronological order, something that should really just be a playlist option on Disney+, right? Last dig at Disney, I promise. The point is, fans have always wanted to engage with their favorite artists and creative works. Creativity inspires creativity, but until recently, they haven't had a way to contribute on equal footing. That started to change with platforms like Wattpad, the social writing community where 50 Shades first grew to prominence. Wattpad now has a studio division and actively helps Hollywood connect with its creators. And we've seen similar dynamics emerge on TikTok, where the Disney film Ratatouille and now the Netflix show Tiger King have been crowdsourced into musicals, with fans voting up the best versions of songs composed and performed entirely by the community. The TikTopera seems like a transitional format, because it's notable that both Disney and Netflix have blessed their creation and performance, but neither will be hosting them on their streaming platforms. That tells you that they see it less as content and more as marketing, and not core to their future. I think that's a mistake. Creators who are native to these platforms understand this dynamic differently. Take Twitch, for example. If gaming is the new Hollywood, the movie stars aren't game designers or creatives, they're Twitch streamers. Streamers are the individuals who are monetizing at the highest rate in the gaming industry, and building loyal fan bases as they do it. And their creative output is inseparable from their fans. Not only do they monetize directly through subscriptions and sponsorships, they're also incredibly responsive to their audience. The real-time chat is baked into Twitch as a platform, and successful streamers need to be responsive to their audience in real time if they want to succeed. Frankly, it's something that most old-school celebrities probably couldn't handle. Next-generation storytelling is going to be collaborative. Whether it starts from a canonical text that gets remixed by the community, or as a grassroots effort that gets pulled up and shaped by an artist, the line between creator and community will continue to blur. As excited as I am about immersive technologies, I think that this might be even bigger. When we think back to the first quarter of the 20th century, one of the biggest shifts in retrospect will be that we started consuming all of our media on computers, on devices that were capable of creating and remixing the same content we were consuming. The line between consumer and creator has never been blurrier, and we're only at the beginning. So what can we learn from creators on Twitch and TikTok? First, think about your audience as a community. They're not there waiting to receive a perfectly crafted piece of art, and interacting with them shouldn't be a task handed off to your marketing team. It should be a core component of your creative process. Second, everyone in your community is a creator too. They may not have the polish or the resources that you do, but they have all the same passion, and the tools they have access to are getting better and better every year. Third, it's time to reimagine your creative process to incorporate the community that surrounds you. Tight feedback loops of sharing and responding will only make your work better and reinforce the relationship between you and your fans. So remember, the future of digital entertainment is global, omni-channel, immersive, and built by a community. I can't wait to see what you're going to make. Thank you so much.